Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
For tuning in, 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOC-DALI. So one of my listeners showed me a post of one of their good friends on social media. And the listener was a little shocked because they keep their politics to themselves, which that's fine. You want to be political? Great. You don't want to be political? That's your choice. That's what makes America great. Some people love politics. It's a great hobby for them. I even had a medical student when he applied to medical school. He said under hobbies, there wasn't hiking, things like that. It was political news. He really, really loved diving into politics. If that's what they want, liberal, conservative, right, left, independent, Green Party, that's their passion. They're allowed to have a passion. That's great. Some people, they're like, I want to keep it to myself. I don't really want politics to invade my life and take over like a cancer. And so this particular listener doesn't really, stand anywhere politically, but noticed that a good friend of theirs was actually celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. And this really shattered their faith in that relationship, going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And, me, I'm not shocked because I'm seeing similar things online. You should have seen the BS after the Hamas attack and hostages taken and raped and beheaded, seeing what people I knew actually take Hamas side. Nothing surprises me anymore these days. But for a lot of other people, this issue that happened, this assassination of Charlie Kirk, or even the assassination attempt on Trump, kind of revealed some people's politics. And I don't care if you're right, left, if you voted for Trump, voted for Biden, voted for Kamala Harris. Look, you're my fellow American. I love you. That's what makes America so great. We could have diversity of political opinion, right? We're not here to be a fascist regime. We're not here to only have the Democrats rule or only have the Republicans rule. Okay, we want elections. We want choice. We also love that these parties are evolving. Now, the Republican Party of today is a little different than Bush's Republican Party. Just like the Democratic Party of today is not the Kennedy Democrat Party. So, that's how things go in life. That's how it's supposed to go. But, seeing what I'm seeing online and my listener wait a second, if they're celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, what if they find out that I agree with some of the things Trump might say and some of the things Kamala might say or whatever, and are they going to celebrate my death? And the answer is they could. I mean, if anybody is celebrating the death of somebody, there's already something kind of wrong. Now, I've had enemies in my life, and many of them have succumbed to cancer, other things. I feel bad for them. I pray. I don't want to see anybody die. Hitler, yes. Hitler needed to die. And there's reports saying he did escape and he faked his death with Eva Braun. But, there's very few people I would step out of my human, body and say that person needs to die. So that'd be Hitler. But I don't care who you voted for. But when you see people say, well, he got what he deserved, karma. He was talking about guns and Second Amendment rights. And really? So let's say you have a friend who is in support of an EV mandate. And they get killed by, let's say, an electric vehicle in an accident. You're going to celebrate? No, you're not going to celebrate. They died. This is horrible. You don't want to see anybody die. But that's not what we're seeing. And it's, the death of Charlie Kirk and the assassination, not only was it tragic because he's a father of two, newly married, he was fighting for free speech. Whether you agree with his politics or not, he brought speech back to campuses and allowed there to be debates by the right and the left. And so it's very unsettling to see him get silenced. And this threat of, we're going to go after Trump, we're going to go after this constant threat is very frightening. And it's also scary for the Democrats, because the Democrats don't want to be the party of assassinations. They don't want people thinking that this is something that they support. But then they have these idiots online supporting it. That MSNBC commentator got fired, by the way. And he yesterday was like, well, we don't know the facts. It could have been one of Charlie Kirk's supporters shooting a gun. Really? Come on. I think the Jaguars just fired one of their communications directors or team because they were reveling in the murder of Charlie Kirk. Okay, that's not what America's about. We don't cheer on the death. If, let's say, somebody is bungee jumping and they're an avid athlete in bungee jumping and they die in bungee jumping, do you say they got what they deserve? No, you mourn them. These football players who are playing football and then they get severe injuries and may later die from their injuries. Do we say it served them right? No, we mourn for them. And so seeing the human, or seeing humans, not all of them, but seeing some humans, they think they're talking to their audience, and some of them are getting cheered on, but I'm looking at some of the comments and they're like, a man died. Really? This is what you're saying? Really? I mean, it does freak you out when you really care about somebody and you see how they think. And I mean, you might dislike Chuck Schumer. You might dislike, Mike Johnson. You don't wish death on people. I remember hearing when Obama was president, people talking about somebody needed to assassinate him. I'm like, are you kidding me? Nobody should assassinate anybody. If you're unhappy that you lost an election, get back to the polls next election. But you're hearing people hope that a president dies. And look at the comments you saw with Trump. People making fun of the shooter for missing. It's disgusting. And that is, I mean, not only is the Charlie Kirk, murder a tragedy and all the other, murders that happen in the United States tragedies, but seeing fellow humans act the way they are and have no problem being public about it. Now, some of them are getting fired. Now, but if let's say you disagree with somebody politically and something bad happens to them, it's really easy. Just think human first and go look. Imagine if a doctor was celebrating somebody dying in the ER. They would lose their license. It's crazy. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Dr. Daliah or X, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Vermont, Virginia, are issuing orders to ease up COVID-19 vaccine access. And this is causing some confusion between what the CDC is recommending under RFK Jr. and HHS versus what states are doing. And this, the Virginia Department of Health issued yesterday an order making it easier for eligible Virginians to get the vaccines in the weeks ahead. Because the FDA has recently ended broad emergency authorizations for COVID vaccines, which were placed for the last 5 years, and said, look, now we get to relook at this. We get to relook at the risk factors. We get to relook at the benefits. We get to relook at the resources we have. Should money be spent on this by tax dollars for healthy individuals, or should we make sure we pay for sick individuals? These are the things that have to be looked at. So the FDA has, now that the dust settled, say, okay, now we're going to take a look at this and see what's going on. But healthcare providers and pharmacists are not necessarily now going to have the legal protection and lower their malpractice risk if they freely offer or strongly urge 6-month-olds to get it and pregnant women to get it. Now, this new order does allow Virginians 18 years or older to still get the vaccine even without a prescription. The new federal requirements, have said you do need one if you're healthy, and if you don't have any risk factors, you will need a prescription for it. But if you have medical conditions and you are high risk, the access is still there. In fact, you could still get a vaccine if you want to. Just will insurance pay for it? Do you have to pay cash? And so many people are freaking out about the quote unquote barrier. And they say that, if we don't really have a lot of healthy people wanting the vaccine. That's the thing. COVID vaccination has dropped drastically. It's still been pretty robust in high risk populations, but in terms of healthy populations, the average teenager doesn't want it. The average college student doesn't want it. The average pregnant person doesn't want it. So you'd think it's almost moot. But because the left really wants to fight everything RFK Jr. is doing, these states are now stepping up, coming up with these coalitions saying, look, we are going to still expand widespread access. All right. So what does that mean? Some people say, Daliah, who cares? Whoever wants to get the shot could get the shot. And honestly, that's how I stand. If you want to get the shot, you get it. But it's not that simple. Who pays for it? When does, the CDC is supposed to make recommendations on who and when get what? When a parent says, look, my 6-month-old got his 2-month-old shots, his 4-month-old shots. Now what do I do? In addition to the 6-month shots, do I also have to give the flu? Do I also have to give the COVID? What does the science currently say? Well, if the CDC is using the pseudoscience they were relying on back in 2021, my question as a doctor is, when are we going to reevaluate it? When do we know Well, when do we, why are we doing 2021 medicine now? If the COVID strains are getting milder, we have natural immunity. There's reported risk factors with the vaccines. Why aren't we leaving it up to the people if they want it? And the CDC is recommending that the high-risk people still get it. People are acting like RFK Jr. is taking away all the vaccines. As far as he's concerned, they are still recommending the COVID vaccine. Still, to this day, the CDC is recommending the COVID vaccine if you are high risk or have at least one risk factor. Obesity is a risk factor. If you smoke, that's a risk factor. So although when COVID was hitting really hard, there were some studies looking at smokers and how because their lungs were so dry and scarred, they didn't have as aggressive a cytokine storm as non-smokers. The studies are mixed. I do believe if you smoke, you're at higher risk for severe COVID disease. But that was an interesting finding. So, we don't really have people breaking down the door asking for COVID shots. I think I have only had one person ask to get the COVID vaccine in the last year or two. But the things we need to kind of understand is, one, who pays for these? If the government's not paying for it, and the average shot, I think CVS charges $224 a shot. Well, what if insurances say, if you're going to keep this expansion on the COVID vaccines, we're going to raise prices. And the average person who doesn't get COVID shots are like, why am I paying extra for this? Why are we still recommending the shot? The flu shot, I like how we do it. It's not ideal because we have to decide what is going to be in the flu shot for this season back in February. We have to make that decision before we even see the Southern Hemisphere flu strains. So but each year we take our best guess at the circulating strains. And it's updated each year. Some people might need a booster flu shot, but for the most part, you could get your yearly flu shot. We've had very good safety data, although I did have a friend who went into Guillain-Barré. He's a doctor, a liberal Democrat who refuses, vaccines and anymore for him, obviously, and was very anti-mandate. But Guillain-Barré is where your immune system, after the vaccine or an illness, decides to fight your spinal cord. So he was actually temporarily paralyzed after getting his flu shot. It's rare, but Guillain-Barré could happen from flu itself or the vaccine, just like with COVID or any other illness or vaccine. So it's high time that we reevaluate what needs to be done. Now there's this big push to have Medicaid pay for Ozempic and Mounjaro and the weight loss counterparts of Wegovy and Zepbound. Well, if those are $1,000 a month shots, who's paying for that? And if an insurance company has to now pay for these shots, because let's say the CDC recommends it, all our premiums go up, even more than they already are. So somebody has to need to take a step back and go, what do we need to do? Now, this isn't foreign territory because that's what the United States Preventative Services Task Force always does. They go, you know what? You don't have to do self-breast exams. We don't have to offer routine thyroid ultrasound screening. It's too much. If you're at risk, do it, but we're not going to recommend blanket recommendations. I still think it's very important for you to check your own breasts. But the reason why they're recommending against that is because they say, well, if you find something, then you're going to go and get a biopsy. And then you're going to get a mammogram and you're going to get an ultrasound. And then you're going to panic. And then what if it's a false negative? And so the cost goes up per person. Well, as far as I'm concerned, know your body. Check your testicles for lumps. Check your breast for lumps. Check your underarm, your groin. Any abnormal lump, get it checked out. Skin cancer screen. Have your spouse do mole patrol and check for moles and see if anything is looking different. That might not be a USPSTF recommendation, but as a doctor, I don't think it hurts. But the reason why the USPSTF doesn't recommend a lot of these blanket things is because of the cost. And they don't want people panicking and getting things that they may not need. Well, then where's that same thinking as it pertains to the COVID vaccine? So your state might make changes because they want to look like they are, fighting RFK Jr. And as I said personally, whoever wants the shot can still get one. Now, if your doctor is saying, look, I don't like the side effects, they have every right to do that. Now, but people, are concerned that, and if the COVID vaccine helps you, then the funny thing is most of us do have a risk factor for COVID. A healthy 6-month-old, well, so, if a doctor is convinced that baby really, really needs to have the COVID vaccine, they'll order it. But in terms of just blanket recommendations, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Tuning in, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer. So, a bullet used to kill Charlie Kirk was engraved, allegedly, with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. A notice was sent to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, and they said the bullets found inside the rifle contained messaging on them. Now, this is very similar to the Minnesota Catholic school shooting, where he inscribed, and he used, I think, one of those silver Sharpies that with smiley faces and calling his gas Jew gas and all sorts of things. I mean, just horrible, horrible stuff. It looks like this guy might have done something similar in terms of wanting messaging on the bullets. And, when you see, Charlie Hurt shot one single shot to the neck, pierced the jugular, he bleeds out. His team rushes him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead at the hospital. I was under the impression that he died, pretty quickly, but they didn't want to make a statement soon. But then there were reports that they were able to clamp the jugular and they were able to keep him alive and try to give him transfusions. So and we were praying, and sadly, he succumbed to this gunshot wound. But the weapon was wrapped up in a towel with a spent cartridge in the chamber. They said another 3 unspent rounds, according to Daily Mail and the Wall Street Journal. Oh, I apologize. My gosh, these computers. Oh. I guess they found another 3 unspent bullets as well. Now, I apologize. My computer is going down, but I want to give you what we have here from the Wall Street Journal. All of them had wording on them. The Department of Justice source confirmed with Daily Mail that this bulletin is authentic and that they did recover evidence from the site of the assassination, and they are still looking at that. The ATF is not yet ready to comment on the contents of the report because it is an active investigation. And what is so eerie about what happened is a student had been asking, or somebody from the audience was asking about transgender mass shootings that have happened and the number compared to other mass shootings. And obviously the percentage of the population of people who are transgender, I mean, the average transgender, I have a transgender family member, in our extended family. I'm the most amazing person ever, sweet as a dove, wouldn't hurt a fly. The rise in individuals now that we're seeing causing crimes like this is going up now that more people are identifying as transgender. But there is a lot of debate. Are the hormones affecting their thinking? I think if somebody wants to kill somebody, I don't think the hormones are enough to make or break. I think if they're that disgusting and they want to kill somebody, whether they're cisgender, transgender, wherever somebody wants to kill somebody, I don't think a medicine is going to make or break that per se. But you do wonder, those individuals who are told, yes, we will make you, somebody you're not. We will promise you that you will look like a woman like Beyonce, or you will look like a man like John Cena. And they go, I'm not. I don't look like that. You lied to me. Is there anger? Do they lash out? Do they feel like they don't belong when we should be spending time like we did? After we got rid of all these these gay conversion classes, to go love yourself. Who you are is amazing. I mean, you love music, you love art, you love sports, you love dresses, you love fashion, you love men, you love women. Whether you're gay or not, you, like Lady Gaga had sung for, you were born this way. Be proud of who you are. Walk strong, walk proud. But instead, it's no. You know what? Let's get some doctors involved and let's change you. Let's castrate you. Let's use hormones. These people could eventually start getting angry. But no, the majority of people who are mass shooters do not necessarily identify as transgender. However, somebody was asking him about that when he gets killed. And now we're seeing these inscriptions on the bullets that are suggestive of transgender ideology, and that's weird. And it's a coincidence. So, you wonder, there's been a lot of conspiracies as to what's going on. There's a video of two people who looked like they were doing signals. Somebody touching his hat, touching his face, another one making a signal with his arms. So people were wondering, were there other people involved? The shooter is still at large, although we do have a picture of what he looks like. He appears to be a white male, anywhere between 5'7", 5'11", depending. It's hard to tell with the picture. Slender, was wearing a black shirt with an American flag. Was he doing that to look like he blended in with other students for the Charlie Kirk Turning Point program that was happening? Or so we can't read too much into what he did with his shirt. But one theory is he vanished by plane, where he left, and there was an airport within 5 miles, and this plane that he allegedly could have been on went off radar. Now, I don't know much about this, and again, we got to be really careful with the conspiracy theories, but I got to tell you, when they first caught somebody and witnesses were coming up to the news cameras saying that's not the guy, they got the wrong guy, it was shut down. They took the camera away from these individuals, and they were talking on the news how there could be a lot of conspiracy theories. Well, they were right. That wasn't the guy. They apprehended an older man, and it looks like the suspect is a younger guy. So we do have to, listen to witnesses and look at all possibilities. But a high-powered bolt-action rifle was recovered from a wooded area nearby. The shooter jumped from the roof, fled the scene. And there's a regional airport nearby that is a 10-minute drive from Utah Valley University. And speculation is wondering if he went to Provo Airport. Now, the Salt Lake City, he was in Orem, Utah, which is, I believe, a suburb of Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is huge. You have Provo, you have American Fork, Spanish Fork, Orem. You have multiple suburbs. And they say this regional Provo Airport is about a 10-minute drive from Utah Valley University. Flight tracking shows that there was a private jet, and I'm not saying this is what he was on, but this is the conspiracy theory, that the jet left the airport shortly after 2 p.m., headed south towards the Arizona border, disappeared from radar, then reappears on radar and returns to Provo roughly 1 hour after leaving the airport. Now, the jet has a registered owner in the Utah city of Lehi, or Lehi, I think it's Lehi. And so there is a tail number, so they could look into this. But, and it's not that uncommon for some planes to go off radar. But people are looking at that, and they should, to see if that could possibly be connected, especially since the shooter is at large. And so I look at this as this was planned. This was deliberate. I don't know if there is I don't know if this was just a one, somebody acting alone. I believe this was coordinated and that somebody wants to silence Charlie Kirk and all the work he was doing with college students and getting college students excited about the democratic process and voting and debate and conservatism and religion, and that somebody wanted to silence him. And it's frightening to think that that's political violence exists like this in this country, but it does. We'll keep you posted if we get any more information. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99-799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99-799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99-799. Again, FREE to 99-799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Tuning in 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, DOCDALI. So while we're trying to figure out why we have such an uptick in autism and birth defects, that is not necessarily matching the numbers of, the rise in population, et cetera. People are looking at, is it the vaccines? Even though we know that vaccines don't necessarily cause autism per se, autism is genetic. Is there something happening in the womb where these children are being born with it? Or is there an encephalitis or a brain inflammation that's happening post-birth that may be making kids look autistic-like? We need to study it. And RFK Jr. really wants to look at what, is going on and why we're having such a huge uptick where 1 out of every 35 children are now on the autism spectrum, and as well as multiple other sort of birth defects that have been on the rise. So whenever in science you try to assess what's going on, you take a look at, well, what is different between now and, let's say, the 1990s or the year 2000? Okay, well, we do have more vaccines, which is why they're looking at that. We do have more medications. We have an uptick in the prescribing of antidepressants. I mean, I remember, with patients, there were some things that we were really comfortable with letting pregnant people have, but a lot of things were like, no, they're category C. They could have fetal effects on the fetus. Only use those medicines if you really have to. And now I see very commonly a lot of pregnant women are on antidepressants. Now, mind you, having postpartum psychosis or going through a psychosis or mental illness during pregnancy does not help the fetus. And so it is understandable that OBs do want to make sure that their patients are getting, mental health care that they need. But it does beg the question, are these medications causing, a rise in autism or birth defects? The Tylenol use, we rampantly, we're giving Tylenol like it was candy, saying, look, you can't take a lot of medications when you're pregnant, but you can take as much Tylenol as you like. I remember hearing a doctor say that. I'm like, no, don't take as much Tylenol as you like. It could affect your liver. It could still affect the baby. And luckily, they rolled that back, especially now that they're looking at neurodegenerative risk with Tylenol. But moving forward, what else are we doing now that we didn't do a lot in the 90s and 2000s? Well, cell phone radiation. Everybody and their mother has a cell phone. I remember putting my plate on my stomach. I remember with my kid playing, he would put stuff on my stomach, like, the mountain, right? So younger brother who was in my uterus, must have been exposed to whatever toys my son was putting on. But nowadays, I bet if I had a cell phone, now if I was pregnant now, I would be putting my cell phone on my stomach, laying it there for a minute. I don't know. What if that's not ideal? But additionally, one thing that is huge in terms of a change is marijuana. Marijuana, now that it's been legalized in multiple states, we are looking at marijuana use in pregnancy. And a study has come out saying that smoking cannabis could have a catastrophic effect on fetal development and fertility. This isn't anything new. We knew about this. It's just now that marijuana is legal, we're forgetting that a lot more people are accessing it. Even if they're not smoking it themselves, their partner may be using it and smoking it. So researchers from the University of Toronto in Canada say that cannabis use has nearly doubled in the past decade. Actually, in the U.S., cannabis has nearly doubled in the past decade. 22% of individuals over the age of 12 had reported using pot in 2023. Over the age of 12. This is, being used pretty religiously by kids. Now, that is a huge uptick from 2013. Researchers from the University of Toronto in Canada say this dramatic rise, partly driven by, decriminalization of marijuana, legalization of it, is now raising concerns about the impact on fertility. So they looked at studies. And they conducted 2 studies. One study looked at oocytes, or the immature human egg cells. And they saw what happened to these immature egg cells when THC, the psychedelic component of marijuana, was exposed to it. And another study looked at 1,000 egg cell fluid samples taken from patients undergoing in vitro fertilization, where we take eggs and sperm, create embryos in a lab, as opposed to in vivo, where we do like artificial insemination. In vitro means it's in a lab setting. And 62 samples of the fluid tested positive for THC, resulting in 6% positivity rate. And then they compared those to the quote-unquote clean samples to assess how the egg cells develop differently. In both studies, according to Daily Mail, the researchers found that the THC, the psychedelic component of marijuana, had been associated with lower rates of embryos that contained the correct number of chromosomes. Well, that could lead to severe birth defects, even miscarriage. In the analysis of the IVF patients, 60% of the embryos in the THC positive group had the proper number of chromosomes, meaning 40% didn't. Now, with that, when they compared to the THC negative, it was 67%. So not as much of a difference, but still a significant difference. In the lab study, THC exposure led to 9% increase in rates of embryos containing an improper number of chromosomes and more than double the rate of abnormalities in spindle structures that assist in chromosomal development. So, we do understand that IVF, there's other factors, hormones, etc. And by the way, that's another, thing that we could be looking at, the different types of birth control. Birth control, we have multiple different, more options, in the 90s and 2000s and the 2010s, than we might have used back in the 80s. But I think it is, worth a look at, and we should be, ensuring that our pregnant population is not using marijuana. Now, I know some of you might say, why the hell would a pregnant woman even consider that? Well, one, if it was something that they were commonly doing prior to pregnancy, it may be a tough habit to break. If they're not sleeping, if they're having headaches, if they're in pain, if they're nauseated, they may inappropriately think that marijuana will help them. And that's a huge concern. And so I do think that needs to be looked at. What RFK Jr. was correct. If the science is not necessarily saying that vaccines are causing autism or something post-birth of a child is causing autism, then what is happening in utero? We do need to study that. We do need to look at that. And chromosomal abnormalities. And here's the thing. When you do have a child with a severe autism or chromosomal abnormalities, some of them cannot live alone or hold a job long term. They need societal help. And we, as a society, fail in terms of having enough resources and enough money to take care of these individuals for life. The state may have some, but we have family members who are really panicking because they have, children who are not able to, survive on their own because of their severe autism. And so if we are expecting an uptick in the number of individuals with developmental disorders, chromosomal abnormalities, autism, we need to look at ways to prevent it. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.